Hi there, this is Pratik Joshi and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to look for another service of AWS, that is AWS CLI, and we'll look into the key points why and where we are going to use the AWS CLI. So let's get started for that. So the key agenda for this video will be what is AWS CLI, how we are going to install that AWS CLI into our Windows or Unix machine, and how we can use the CLI to call our AWS managed services. So creating an IAM rule, IAM users, and accessing the S3 buckets, that is what I'm going to cover as an example for AWS CLI. And then we'll look into the creating of a multiple IAM users and adding that users onto the AWS credential file. So don't get confused right now. We'll quickly go through that and we'll see that how we can use and add the IAM users into our credential files, right? So let's get started with that. First of all, we need to understand that what is AWS CLI. Okay, so AWS is a command line interface to access the public APIs of AWS. Now what does that mean? That means that let's say you are having some bucket into S3, correct, and then you can you wanted to access the file present into the AWS S3 bucket. So how many ways you can do that? So first of all, one way is directly accessing that directly accessing that file using the S3 bucket UI, which is AWS service. You can go to the portal, you can log in into the portal, go to that specific bucket and access the file. Second thing is programmatic access, which is you are writing a code, whether it is a Java, Python, .NET, whatever it is. You will pass the specific credentials to access the S3 bucket and you will get it. And the same way, programmatically, if you are having AWS CLI installed in your local machine, you can directly go to your CMD prompt, that is command prompt, and you can access the files as well. So we are going to look and try it out that how we can do the specific thing. So now it is not restricted only to AWS S3. You can use RDS as well, that is a relational database service provided by AWS, and there are many more services which you can programmatically access using AWS CLI. So it's kind of a command line interface using which you can perform your queries, and we can you can, before going into the actual production implementation, you can give it a hands-on. Okay, so that is what the AWS CLI basic draw line is. Now AWS CLI provide direct access to the public APIs of AWS services. That is the same, it will directly give you the access to view and get the information about or the description about your services which you have created on AWS. Okay, you can explore a service capabilities with the AWS CLI and develop shell script to manage your resources. Now this is another aspect of your AWS implementation. So let's say in case of you wanted to develop a shell script which accesses your already predefined public APIs which you have created on AWS, and then how you can manage it or how you wanted to see that. So in that cases, you can create a shell script which manage your resources, and you can do a hell lot of things using the AWS. So guys, I'm pretty confident that this video will be helpful to you, and it will give you an immense understanding of the AWS CLI. Okay, so this is what the introduction part is. Now I'll take you through the actual implementation, and I'll guide you that how we can download our AWS CLI and how we can perform the basic commands and how to access the public APIs available. Okay, so be there. Now we are into the document part of AWS, and this is the link which you need to refer in case of you wanted to download the AWS CLI. Okay, so I'll share this link into the description box. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at the installation part. Okay, so what this means is there are two specific versions of AWS CLI, that is version 1 and version 2. Version 2 is much more powerful than version 1. They have given so many new things onto the version 1 or version 2, so we will not going to look into the differences between that, but from now onwards they are recommending to download and use the CLI version of 2. Okay, so in case of if you are using a Windows machine, this is the a specific description which you need to go through that version Windows. It is kind of an installer which they will provide to you. You just need to install that MSI the same way you are doing for any specific exe file. Okay, so you need to go to this link which is here, and then you need to download it, the MSI. Okay, and then once you are downloading that MSI, you need to install it the same way we are doing for our exe file. Okay, so this is for the Windows user. For the Unix user, what I will do is I'll create a separate video, and that separate video will consist of a Cloud 9 environment, which will be the Amazon Linux machine and then we'll try to see how we can utilize the AWS CLI and how we can perform the AWS CLI installations into the Cloud 9 environment. Okay, so you need to click on this, and it will be this will give you an Windows MSI to download. In my case, I already have it, so I'll take you to that installation. Okay, so in my case, this is the AWS CLI which I have downloaded from the same link. It was a few time back, and what you have to do is you have to simply double click on it, and it will start asking you the steps which you need to just simply proceed with pressing the next. In my case, I have already installed, so I'm not going to install it again, but just for the sake of your reference, I'm giving you this implementation, so showing you that how it will look like. So you have to provide the you have to press the next button, and then it will get downloaded. Now where it is going to download, I'll take you to that part. Okay, let me close this window first of all, and then we'll go to the download option. So you need to go to C and then program files and then Amazon, and this is the link AWS CLI where you'll find your installation. Okay, so this is the place where it got installed. So once it got installed, what you have to do is you have to quickly go to the CMD part, which is this one, and provide the CMD command and open your command line interface. Now once you are into command line interface, how you are going to see whether it got installed successfully or not? For that, you have to provide a command, that is AWS version, and it will in a while give you the version number which it got installed. So if you are getting this window, that means your AWS CLI is installed successfully. Okay, in case of if you are facing any kind of an issue, please write me a comment on my comment box, so that I'll help you out on that. Okay, so now as we have installed the AWS CLI pretty easily, the next step which we are going to do is a programmatic access of our S3 service. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bucket on my S3 service, and I'm going to put a file into that. Okay, and we'll try to access that file using AWS CLI. So for that, what I will do is I'm going to create a one IAM user will have access to the S3 bucket, and one more user will be there which won't be having that access, and then we will try to perform our query by seeing whether that users are able to access the S3 bucket or not. Okay, so now I am into my AWS console. I logged into my AWS console, and now let's jump into the S3 service. Okay, and then after going into the S3 service, what we are going to do is we are quickly going to create a bucket, and then we are going to upload we'll upload one file onto the S3 bucket. Okay, I already have one bucket over here, so let me first delete that bucket and we'll create a new one. Okay, Okay, so let's create a bucket now. Now I have already created one video on creating of S3 bucket and accessing that using the Java programming language. The link which you for that you will be able to find it over here. Yeah, and please visit that video. It will be so much helpful to you to understand that how you can access your S3 bucket using the Java programming language, and it's a Maven based implementation which you can directly download from a GitHub repository and give it a hands-on. Okay, so here you have to create a bucket name. Now to create a bucket name you need to follow certain rules, and that rules are something like you can't give a space, you can't give a special character in between. So let's say if you give a space and write it like this way, it will start complaining. Okay, so if you try to create it, it will say that bucket name contains invalid character, means it is containing a space. The same way if you provide a specific special character, it will start complaining again. So you don't have to do that. You have to provide a specific name as per the role mentioned. So we have a bucket name over here. Let's start to create it. So my bucket is created now. Let's jump into the bucket and we'll try to add one file into that. So let's upload a file and we'll go with data.json. Yeah, and let's upload it. We won't go into the specification or the granular level configuration of it because that is not the agenda of this video. So now we have our file got created onto that. The next step which we need to do is we need to create an IAM user. So let's go to the IAM user and we'll create to user. For that, one user will have the AWS S3 access and we'll give it a programming hands-on. Okay, so let's go to user. Let's add one user. We'll name it CG, that is Cloud Geeks, and S3 user will ask for the programmatic access for that. Now see, I again wanted to cover this topic where I have already covered into the IAM specification video which is there, but I wanted to touch upon one more time that if you really wanted to implement or access the APIs you have created onto your AWS account, you have to provide the AWS programmatic access. Using that you will going to get an AWS access key and secret access key, using which you can write your own program to access the public API. And the same way, if you let's say if you wanted to give a permission to this user to log into your console and give some permissions, for that you have to provide this access. But for this tutorial we are going to work on the programmatic access. Okay, so that we can use the CLI and I can demonstrate how we can perform our query. Okay, so let's go to the permission here. Let's create a group because creation of group is important for any specific user. I'll name the group to S3 group, and here I'll write down for the S3 service because we wanted to have a programmatic access. So for this one I'll go with AWS S3 full access. Okay, and create the group. So our group is got created and we have our attached policy, that is AWS Amazon S3 full access. Let's move ahead and review that. Yeah, and once you create that user, it will give you the secret access key and access ID for that, and using that you can access your specific bucket. As we have given the full access of S3 bucket, we will be able to see that part. Okay, one more thing which I wanted to touch upon here is, guys, it is very much important and it is in best practice as per the AWS documentation. They have mentioned that to create an AMI user and accessing your APIs or accessing your console from AWS IAM user is the most recommended way. You should not access any specific APIs or console using your root user. So when and then you require to access it, make sure you are creating an IAM user and doing that process. Okay, so now we are having our access key ID and secret access key. This ID and access key will be available only one time, so make sure you download that file and keep it in a safe place so that you can access it again. So once you lose this page, you won't be able to create it one more time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the user. We have already created the user, so now I'm going to make an entry of this access key and access ID into our credential files of AWS CLI. Okay, so there are two ways: one by using the AWS CLI itself, and one by actually accessing the credential file. I'll show you the both the way. One user we will provide the detail using the CLI, and one we will provide the details using the credential file. Okay, so let's jump into the CLI and we'll see. So now we are back into our AWS CLI, and here we can provide our credentials. So how we can do that? So for that you have to provide the command called /configure, and then you have to provide a profile. Okay, and profile name I will provide the same which I have created, that is CGS3 user. Okay, so let's say if you are not providing this profile at the initial level, it will create a default user for you. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, let me show it to you. So AWS configure, if you hit enter, it will ask you for the secret key and secret access ID. So I have just copied the access key. Let me paste it into here. This is my AWS secret key which I copied, and now I need to provide the secret access ID. So let's jump into the credential file, copy it, come back, paste it. Okay, default region US East 2. I'm not going to provide any entry over here. Default output format not required for now, and your entry is provided over here. Okay, so now as you have provided the initial entry, I'll take you how it will look like. I'll show you into the file how it will look like. Okay, so for that what you have to do is you need to go to the specific installation directory of your AWS. Okay, for that you need to jump into your C drive, and then you have to go to your users, your user, and then you will have your a.aws folder over here. Okay, so if you open this file, you will see the default implementation which we have just provided as an user, right? This is our user which we have created onto the AWS CLI, right? So what I'm going to do is now I'm specifically going to mention the name. Excuse me guys. So I'm specifically going to mention the name. I don't want this default name, so I'll keep this entry as it is. We'll quickly jump again back to our CLI part. And what I'm going to do is I'll try to provide one more configuration with the same access key ID, but name will be different. So for that you have to provide -- profile and then username. CGS3 user. Okay, I'm going to provide one more time the values which I have used from here. The same value I'm providing. Okay, I'm not going to provide anything now. As we have provided the same property for two users, let's jump into our .credential file and we'll see. Now as you can see here, I have created one more user from the CLI point, and that name I have given is CGS3 user, the same keys which I have provided, and the entry by default it got inserted into the file. You can do one more thing, you can directly even copy paste the values over here and create a user. Okay, so let me show you that part as well. So now I will create one more user into the IAM user roles, and we'll see how we can do that. Okay, so let's jump into our console. We are back into our console. Let's add one more user here. I'll name it as a CG Cloud Geeks, and some, let's say, RDS user. Okay, Programmatic Access. Next, create a group, RDS group. Okay, let's say RDS anything. Okay, and create a group. Okay, so now we have created our group already. We have two group created. One is that CGS3 group, and one is the RDS group. Okay, so at the time of creation of a user, you should not select the existing group and add that user into that. If you do, the attached policy of that group will be automatically assigned to that user, and that is not our intention for this tutorial. So I have created one more group, and I have added the newly created user, IAM user, into the newly created group. Okay, so let's click next. Tags, we don't have to provide any value over here, it is not required for now, and let's create the user. So user got created. Let's make an entry of our secret key and secret key ID into our credential file. Okay, so now for this one I'll use the credential file. So we are back into our credential file. I have created one more user, so I will name that user here. That is CGRDS user, I guess. Okay, and I copied the newly created access key. Now let's copy the secret key as well. So copy, and then I will paste it here. Okay, so I'm saving this file. So now we are having two users. Actually we are having three users, but the default and the CG user both are same, and there is no change into that. I just made the change of names for your understanding. The credentials are exactly same. Okay, so we now, as we have created two users, one is for S3 and one is for RDS, we will try to access the file from S3 bucket which we have just uploaded. Okay, so let's jump into the AWS console. Now we are back into our CLI. The default user which we have used, which we have created, if you are not providing anything, the system, if you are not providing explicitly the profile, AWS CLI will going to use the default user. Okay, so I'll show you that one first. For that, what we can do is we can list out the directory of S3, and we'll see whether we are having a permission of that or not. Okay, so for that, S3 ls, and we'll hit enter. And as you can see, we have successfully loaded our Cloud Geek 1, that is our bucket name, successfully loaded into the console. Okay, so the same thing which we are going to try with our profile which we have created. So let's give it a try. Profile, and then I'll provide the username which is having the access of S3. Okay, so that is CGS3 user. Okay, and let's give it a try. And great, and we are able to do that as well. Now let's give it a try with the user which is not having the S3 access. Okay, so CGRDS user, and let's try it out. And as you can see, the error occurred, that is an error occurred, access denied, while calling the list bucket operation, access denied, because we do not have specific access for this thing. Okay, so now you will be able to understand that by providing the hyphen profile username, you will be able to call a specific service. The same way you can call even RDS service. I haven't covered that RDS because then the length of this video will be too much and you will feel quite boring on that part, but you can try it out by your own. And if you are feeling if you are having any specific query, you can reach out to me by providing the comment on that. Okay, so that is the thing. Now let's try to look into that file which we have created, that is data.json. And to do that, what we have to do is we have to provide a command called AWS s3ls s3 colon double slash. Now we have to provide our bucket name, that is cloud geeks 1 hyphen hyphen profile cg s3 user. Okay, and if you hit enter, we should be getting the data item. And there you go. Yeah, we have a data.json file which we have uploaded, and the data got loaded onto the AWS CLI. Okay, so I hope guys you are pretty much familiar and comfortable now by AWS CLI on Windows. Okay, so I think that is what we have the agenda for this specific tutorial. Let's quickly rewind and recap all the things which we have learned. We learned how to install the AWS CLI. Okay, the link of that download file I'll provide it into the description box. Second part, what we created is we created S3 bucket and uploaded a file onto that. Third one is we've logged into AWS CLI and tried to added credentials of our AWS IAM user. We have created IAM users. Okay, we loaded that IAM users into AWS CLI by using the CLI command line interface, as well as by adding it manually onto our credential file as well. Okay, so this is what we have gone through. Second thing, let's say if you are using AWS CLI, you can provide a profile name as well. By using the profile, you can explicitly create n number of users. If you are not providing any profile, it will be your default user. Okay, so let's say you have already created a default user, and you will again you have one more user which you wanted to put into on your credential file, but you forgot providing your property of hyphen hyphen profile. It will be taken considered as your default, and the already created default user will be renamed, or we can say the credentials will be updated by the latest one. Okay, so that is how you need to make sure you can create n number of users using AWS CLI. Yeah, and then it is highly recommended that you use IAM rules and users to perform any kind of an programming or programmatic access or the UI access. Okay, that is highly recommendable. So yeah, that is what we have for the agenda of this tutorial, guys. Be in touch, like this video if you really think that this is the this effort which I have put it into is helpful. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel, because that is the only motivation which I am getting by the numbers of the subscriber and the view, and it will motivate me more to post this kind of videos. If you wanted to give your suggestions, please let me know on my comment box. If you have any questions, please let me know. Have a great day and keep learning. Thank you so much.